Now you will finally get to meet the great, the wild, the unpredictable, the one and only Jim Morrison.
So, who is Jim Morrison?
Okay, I guess this question of mine was kind of like the famous one, which triggered this whole experience and started the Virgin Rock channel. Remember that one? Who is Freddie Mercury? Well, if you don't know the story, here's the link. But yeah, except for the comments on this channel recommending that I give The Doors a listen, I had never heard the name, neither of The Doors nor of Jim Morrison. So Vlad had to fill me in with some details as usual. But before I tell you what I've learned about The Doors, Jim Morrison, and When the Music's Over, which is the song I'm going to be listening to, I'd like to tell you something else first. You've heard me say that if you want to support my rock journey, a like and a subscribe is truly helpful. And if you want to do more and get more exclusive materials, you can visit my Ko-fi and Patreon pages. And some of you have done just that. And I want to say thank you. But between those two platforms, I have a clear favorite. And I want to tell you which one it is and why. And offer you a little gift. So my favorite is, without any shadow of doubt, Ko-fi. I know it might seem odd. Really? Not Patreon? Or Patreon? Or however people like to pronounce it? Okay, well, those who've been with me from the beginning of this journey know that I started with Ko-fi and had a hard time deciding to go ahead and open a Patreon account as well. And I'll tell you why. As a YouTube creator, there are two primary reasons to open an account on a platform like Ko-fi. First would be to offer exclusive content and content which cannot be published on YouTube due to copyright reasons. And you know I've already run into these issues with the Beatles project. But anyway, the second would be to get the financial support one needs to continue and develop the channel. For example, like when we were recently able to move into this new studio and add some new equipment, which makes the entire experience much easier for us and richer for you too. But you see, there's one major difference between Ko-fi and Patreon, or any other such platform for that matter. If you support me on Patreon with $1, I only get 85 cents of it at the end of the month. 15% of your donation never comes to me, and the 85% which does arrives only at the end of the month. Whereas if you support me on Ko-fi with $1, I get one whole dollar instantly. I don't have to wait a single day to be able to use the money, and every last cent of your donation to me comes to me. But there's another exclusive Ko-fi feature which many of you have used on my Ko-fi page, and that is commissions. Ko-fi allows me to offer you the possibility to have a one-to-one session with me, or to commission your song of choice for me to do a first listen and review. Isn't that great? Of course, you can set up different membership tiers. You have the shop section where you can sell your digital or physical art product. You can keep in touch with every one of your supporters via personal messages, Discord, etc. Everything is there. I mean, there's even a tip jar. So there, now you know why I prefer Ko-fi over any other platform, and why I always encourage you to support me on Ko-fi if you wish to do so. And if you have any plan to become a creator yourself, and why not? I mean, remember how I started, right? If you are a streamer, an artist, a crafter, a writer, regardless, Ko-fi has everything you need to make money doing what you love. So, if you decide to become a creator and share your art with the world while making some money to further develop your work, I have a surprise for you. Down below, in the comments section, you will find a pinned comment to which you can reply. Now, if you use the link there to create a free Ko-fi account before Sunday, June 25th of this year, 2023, you have a chance to win one of 2 $50 prizes, which I am happy to be able to give away. The only requirement is to follow the instructions in the pinned post exactly, including sharing the link to your new Ko-fi account as a reply to my pinned comment. Then, this coming Sunday, June 25th of 2023, of course, we will meet live, finally after such a long time, and I'll answer some of the questions you've written to me, and I want to show you a very special instrument which I'm adding to my wall behind me. And then I will do a random drawing to select the 2 Ko-fi winners, live, together, here at Virgin Rock. Now, back to the Doors. What was I saying? Oh yeah. Except for the comments which have advised me to give the Doors a listen, I'd never heard the name or names The Doors, Jim Morrison, in my life. So, Vlad has filled me in with some details as usual, and here's what I've learned. The Doors were an American rock band formed in Los Angeles in 1965. They recorded and released 6 studio albums with Morrison in the space of 5 years, some of which are generally considered among the greatest of all time. They were dubbed the Kings of Acid Rock and were one of the most successful bands during that time. I guess I have to learn a bit about what specifically acid rock is. By 1972, the Doors had sold over 4 million albums domestically and nearly 8 million singles. They were the first American band to accumulate 8 consecutive gold LPs. According to the RIAA, they have sold 34 million albums in the United States alone and over 100 million records worldwide, making them one of the best-selling bands of all time. And they've been listed as one of the greatest artists of all time by magazines such as Rolling Stone, which ranked them 41st on its list of the 100 greatest artists of all time. And in 1993, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, about Jim Morrison, I understand he is one of the most interesting rock artists in history. He was a singer, poet, and songwriter, and is regarded as one of the most influential frontmen in rock history. The song I'll be listening to, When the Music's Over, well, it's been stated this song predicts the birth of grunge music, which ultimately led to the death of rock, as I learned with Carl over our discussion of Soundgarden's Black Hole Sun. Band member John Densmore once said about it, "Playing that song was intense. I had to take a deep breath before playing it because it's not a little 3-minute pop ditty." Well, I'm curious to see what this not 3-minute little pop ditty is. Guitarist Robbie Krieger would later explain the difficulty of his guitar solo, saying, "That solo was really a challenge because the harmony is static. I had to play 56 bars over the same riff." Well, to me, that reminds me of Satie or something like that. And I guess I'll tell you what 56 bars means for those of you who don't know such things in a few moments. The story goes that the band planned to record this song in one single take, but Morrison didn't show up. So the rest of them went ahead and recorded their parts, and then Morrison recorded his vocals in a single take to add them in. Well, I guess I'm ready to give this a listen and see how it goes. And I guess I will have my ears open for that 56-bar guitar solo over a static harmony.
Yeah, come on. when the music's over. When the music's over here. When the music's over, turn up the lights, turn up the lights,
I like
turn
it.
up the lights. Yeah, yeah. When the music's over. When the music's over. When the music's over, turn up the lights, turn up the lights, turn up the lights. Put the music in your special friend. Dance on fires, it intends. Music is your only friend. Until the end, until the end, until the cancel my subscription to the resurrection. Send my credentials to the house of detention. I got some friends inside. The face in the mirror won't stop. The girl in the window won't drop.
It's really changed
A
character
beast
well.
of friends alive,
first
she
one to first
cried, waiting for me outside. Before I sing into the big sleep, I want
Just the
to
drums and the
hear,
voice and the bass.
I want to hear
But the bass is more like a drum.
the
itself.
scream of the butterfly. into my arms. We're getting tired of hanging around. Waiting around
Pulls
with our
you into it.
heads to the ground. I hear a very gentle sound.
A very gentle sound.
Very near yet very far. Very soft yet very clear. Come today, come today. What have they done to the earth? What have they done to our fair sister? Ravaged and plundered and ripped her and bit her. Stuck her with knives in the side of the dawn and tied her with fences and dragged her down. I hear a very gentle sound.
Interesting how the drums go crashing downwards as he says dragged her down.
With your ear down to the ground.
And the music has pulled us down, down.
We want the world and we want it. We want the world and we want it. Now.
To a master storyteller. Just pulls you into the world he creates.
But you like me. Still I like me.
Pulling us back. Now we're back to the original.
So when the music's over,
Love the
when
way
the music's
they're
over,
very
yeah.
intentional about how much instrumental backing there is, and they
When the
it feels like
music's
they're
over, turn out the lights, turn out the lights, turn out the
an
lights.
example of the saying, less is more.
What the music is your
Because then you really
special
feel the
friend.
power at when they
And
bring more in.
fires it intense. Music is your only friend. Till the end, until the end, until the
Before I go back and listen to some parts of this again, I want to tell you well, I was saying a few things along the way, but as we're wrapping, as this music was coming to its conclusion, I was struck by what a great use of non-sound. We can take sound and more sound and bring in more sound and bring in more sound. We can build this massive wall of sound. We can bring in so many complex elements and layer them and stack them and keep adding and adding. And that's all very fine and of course impressive, but at the same time, it achieves certain things. But this is such a great example of don't use more than you have to do. Because if you add more than necessary, you start to lose the most important. And it's like cluttering up a room. If you walk into a room where things are very cleanly, conscientiously spaced, placed, and you feel you're aware of the space around you and the light coming in the window, and the wall is not one mass of artwork and hangings, but there's some blank space where it gives you a little breathing room. That's what this is here. I love their use of volume range, dynamic range. I love the use of time and space. And I guess that's something that I want to dig into more and explore more when I do the in-depth, because this is such a great example of it and so effective. As I said, I felt like I was listening to, well, you know how it is when you're a child and you listen to somebody telling a story, and there's this feeling of entering into this wonder world of, and what next? And what next? What happened? And as an adult, I find it hard to get into that kind of wide-eyed wonder very often, because it takes something really incredibly wonderful to pull me into it in that way. It has to be the musically, if it's a musical piece, it has to be something that grabs my attention and pulls me into it and creates a world in which I can enter and enjoy. I felt like this was one of those moments where it was a combination of the beautiful balance of instrumentation and the voice, the way he changed characters and changed voices for different parts of the story. And it never felt overdone. It never felt like it was labored or effortful to achieve this. But it pulled me in. I really appreciate a piece of music like that. I said I would go back and listen to it again right now on camera and pause and comment more along the way, but I've changed my mind. Right now, I feel like this piece of music is really quite special, and there's a lot to dig into, and I want to do it justice. So I want to live with it for a few days. And this has me very curious about this acid rock idea. I've got to go explore what is acid rock. Why is it called acid rock? Because I would have never guessed this would be called acid rock. It was really beautiful. And there's so many elements within this particular piece of music that are things that I value as a classical musician, things that I appreciate and that I find incredibly meaningful. Whether it's the tonal coloring or the balance and the what we would say interpretation, the delivery of the musical material. All of this, of course, the design of the music, the way the progression was handled one to the next, it was beautiful. And one more thing, I said I would tell you if you don't know what it means when the guitarist was saying it was a static harmony over 56 bars. What is a bar, and what does he mean by 56 bars? Well, in short form, I would explain it like bars in music are a means of measuring the passing of time. So 1 bar is a fairly short amount of time, and 56 bars is a long time. And if you're playing 56 bars of music over a static harmony, a harmony that's not changing, not developing, not progressing, then it's quite a challenge to keep that interesting, engaging for such a long period of time. And I suppose that's why he said it was such a challenge. And yet you saw how I was drawn into this piece of music. And so I guess he did a very fine job. So that is my first listening experience of When the Music's Over, and you can be assured that I will be spending a good amount of time with it over the next several days. This was my first meeting with Jim Morrison, we could say, and I said I would try to figure out more about what acid rock is, but I'm also very, very interested in discovering more of Jim Morrison's work, because it may not be so much the type of music, but more the creator that has such a wonderful impact. So before we wrap up, I have 3 questions for today's questions. The first of which is by Robert Adcox, and he asks, do you really believe that I could learn how to read music? I'm 61. My answer? Absolutely. It's not hard. It's very simple and straightforward. And one of the projects that I want to start is to create a Learn to Read Music course on my Ko-fi and Patreon memberships. It hasn't started yet because I have to catch up on some other projects, but it's coming. And if you're ever interested in pursuing learning to read music, then you might choose to check it out at some point. Next question, Kevin Luffin? I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Says, forgive me if someone else has already asked something along these lines, but I am curious as to what your colleagues in the orchestra think of your exploration of these non-classical musical styles. When you're having coffee with another classical musician, with other classical musicians, do they comment on this project of yours? And what do they think? Yes, they do comment, some of them, the ones who know about it. And I have to say that they have all been incredibly supportive. Of course, some of them have a more varied musical career than I have had. And some of them have more modern listening tastes than I have had. And so many of them are familiar with this music. Not all. But the ones who are, of course, have been incredibly encouraging. The ones who are not have been incredibly curious. And it makes for great conversation. Last question. Kai Lennartson says, what composers inspired you to begin playing the harp? And, well, I guess early on in the channel, I talked a bit about how I ended up choosing the harp as my instrument of choice. Long story short, it wasn't a composer. It was the sound of the instrument. We had a tape, a cassette tape, and a CD when I was a young child. And those 2 recordings, one was solo harp, another was harp with a boys' choir, the Vienna Boys' Choir to be precise. And those 2 recordings I remember as a child, pressing my ear up against the speaker, trying to catch more and more of the harp sound. It wasn't a specific composer. In fact, I didn't really know much about music composed specifically for harp, especially harp solo, until I began my studies as a harp student. That's it for today. Don't forget to check out Ko-fi, and I'll see you next time.